Hello YouTube! Welcome to another instant analysis video. This time going over the third FES banner of the second season of FES cards. And I'm going to give you my instant analysis based on a lot of these cards. We're looking at three cards. Yohane is the first, Rin is the second, and Shioriko is the third. Now we're going to start at the top right here with FES Yohane. Okay? First glance, active attribute SP type. Okay. And the card title, Doshio. What should I do? What should I do? And oh my god, this... Oh god. K-Lab is really trying to get me to wail with this freaking idolized art. Oh my goodness. Anyway, let's not talk about the art. Let's talk about the card itself. So active attribute SP type. 13,171 voltage or appeal at max limit break. Now, when we compare this, right? When we compare this card to some of the other FES cards, let's take a look at something that would be a pretty immediate comparison, which would be FES Setsuna, okay? FES Setsuna is kind of like the bar at which, you know, active cards are judged. Now, Kanan is stronger, but I think that's a little bit unfair. So let's go down like one step. Let's say Setsuna, okay? 13,171 appeal at max limit break. FES Setsuna at max limit break, pre-passives and pre-bonuses and everything, has 13,901 appeal. Which actually puts this Yohane at the third highest appeal in the attribute. Third highest appeal in the attribute. She has a higher base appeal at max limit break than the recent FES Ellie that just came out. Okay? 7388 stamina is kind of whatever. A lower technique stat at 11,566, just fine. Especially when you look at her tap active. Her tap active is a voltage boost equal to 40% of her appeal at skill level 5, which means with the way this scales, right? This is going to scale basically like, it's basically going to scale like Rin. So it's going to start at 38% at limit break 1. At limit break 3, it's going to be 39% of her appeal as voltage for the next SP gauge. Which, realistically, as far as meta things goes, is not very good. Now, can you combine this card with, you know, either FES Setsuna or FES Kanan and do something, you know, kind of nutty? Yeah, sure. But generally, gauge bomb type tap actives are not considered very good. Passive, same attribute passive, which is nice, 5.2% at max skill level. Which does make her a little bit flexible, but not extremely flexible. Then her live show active, which is a gauge fill of 1% of her appeal to the SP gauge every time you complete an AC. And this is guaranteed to happen after every appeal chance. Now, what does this mean? This can be good, but realistically, what happens is if you're running this particular card, and unless you're at an SP gauge fill AC, like, sorry, let me rephrase that. This is not very good just because, right, even when you're clearing ACs, right, what accessory do a lot of people have? Bracelets. Most of the time, your bracelets are going to fill up your gauge no matter what, every time you clear an AC. So this LSA is not very useful at all because it's going to get wasted every time you complete an appeal chance. Now, it may give people a little bit more room to maybe take out a bracelet, but if we're honest, like, this particular LSA will never ever replace a bracelet. A bracelet is just too valuable to be used in your accessories. And so even in an instance where you're running FES Kanon, FES Setsuna, and let's say a Trey Nico, if you're trying to buff all three of those cards on an active attribute voltage ranking song, your bracelets are gonna refill your gauge no matter what. So this extra gauge fill kind of gets wasted. Not kind of, it does get wasted. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my little demon, but as far as a FES card goes, it's not really useful. So Yohane gets two not very useful FES cards. Now, if we're just gauging it on the art, I love the art. I love the unidolized art. I love the idolized art. They're both adorable. But, I mean, if you're asking me for an honest opinion, you're taking my Oshi bias out of it, this card is not great. As far as FES cards go, this is maybe a 4 out of 10. 5 out of 10 at max, just because of the passive. But other than that, you know, I would rather run Kanon and Setsuna and Trey Nico. If this was an SP gauge fill, you're talking about a completely different card. If this wasn't a gauge bomb and it was a gauge fill instead, this card would immediately become meta. This card would immediately become meta and would replace Trey Nico in the front line. Now, Trey Nico would still be backline for songs with for active attribute songs with FES Kanon and FES Setsuna, but as of right now, she's still the go-to card. All right, next we have Rin, a natural attribute voltage type. Which, thankfully, we get another natural attribute voltage type that is actually good. The first natural attribute voltage type card that wasn't free since Forest Fairy Ellie. In the UR slot, having this card is amazing. Okay? Now, when you compare this to Initial Kanon, 13, 814 appeal versus Kanon at max limit break, 11, 19, 34. So, Rin is now very, very good. You know, probably your main frontliner for a natural attribute type song if you don't have FES Nozomi, FES Emma, and Serenade Maki. Now, speaking of her appeal, this appeal, 13, 8, 14, puts her right below, about 87 points below FES Setsuna. So if we are using FES Setsuna as our gauge as to how good is this card, this is very good. Very, very good. 6103 stamina, 12208 base technique. The 12208 base technique is actually really, really big, and I'll tell you why. The 12,208 technique means that this card's crit rate is around 35%, roughly. This card's crit rate is 35%. And for a voltage type card to have a crit rate with that type of appeal at 35% is huge. And look at her tap active. Voltage boost. 42% of her appeal. Oh, whoops. Scanned a little too far ahead. 42% of her appeal as voltage at skill level 5. Basically the same tap active as Setsuna and Kanon both. So at skill level 3, it'll be at 36%. Skill level 4, 39. Max skill level is 42%. Passive. Same attribute appeal buff, which it is very much so more narrow, but still good. Still good. And then we have her live show active, which is the same as FES Kanon's and FES Yo's. At the beginning of a live, increase the appeal of cards in this Dean's strategy by 2.5%. Guaranteed to activate at the beginning of the live. So while this card isn't as powerful as the second FES Kanon, or the first FES Kanon, sorry, while it's not as powerful just voltage-wise as Kanon, this is a pretty damn good card. Now, like I said, the attribute portion of it, it does make it a little bit more flexible, but the thing is, when you have cards this strong, you don't need flexibility. You don't need backline flexibility. What you want is for this card to be able to buff same strategy cards like crazy. Which is why, you know, first FES Kanon, second FES Yo are sought after cards because they increase the appeal of same strategy cards by 6% at skill level 3 all the way maxed out at 7% at skill level 5. So that 1.8% appeal difference, while it may not seem like much, is pretty big, especially at higher levels. But as of right now, this card is looking like the gem of the group. Then the final card, FES Shioriko. Her second FES card. A cool attribute guard type. $83.52 base appeal. 456 base stamina, 93.15 base technique. Not bad. Standard issue FES stamina heal, 40% at max skill level. .2% stamina buff for same attribute cards. Not loving the passive. It does cut down a little bit of her effectiveness. And the revive skill. So we get another card with the revive skill. Initial thoughts on the card. I think functionality-wise, I I still think the second FES Kanan is better. Because the stamina heal is equal. Right? The stamina heal is equal. Kanan has a larger base stamina pool, but Shioriko has more appeal. Granted, they're in two different attributes, but hear me out. The bad part, the blemish on this card is that passive, right? Because unless you're running a fully on attribute team for a cool song, like say Colorful Voice or Wake Up Challenger or something of the sort, if she's the only one in your formation that's of the cool attribute, she's only going to be buffing herself. Kanan, at least you know, is going to buff herself and the two other cards in her strategy stamina by 6%. This Shioriko, if she's the only cool card, she's only buffing herself by 4.6% at skill level 3. So that's a pretty major blemish on the card. Now, this FES card being the first to have the revive skill is kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal. Because FES Ellie, or Initial Ellie's chance to hit this revive skill is only 30%. FES Shioriko's is 50%. So you have, you know, you're basically taking your chances of 1 in 3 to 1 in 2. And you know, it's still not good because most of the time you won't have to worry about this LSA anyway. The only time you'll really need to worry about it is Dream Life Parade. But, I mean, for a FES card, this is like a 6. The clear winner in the banner is right here, though. This Rin is the best card of the bunch. If you're a Rin Oshi, congratulations. Rin actually gets a really, really good card. Gets a really, really good card. Would I roll for it? Based on the strength of the banner, if you are deciding to pass up the Kanan banner, the Kanan Kasu Ellie banner, this banner wouldn't be too bad to pull on. The only problem is, while this Yohane is okay, I find it very hard fitting her in most active attribute type songs. Rin, you can put in any natural attribute song and you'll be fine. So, as far as actually useful cards, if you already have Kanan and Setsuna and they're both close to max limit break or they're at max limit break already, the only card you're realistically looking for on this banner is Rin. And even then, you know, there's been such a priority on gauge fillers that, you know, most people might rate this Rin, like, as far as FES cards go, might rate this Rin like an 8. It's a very good card, but, you know, I've said this before, there's a certain point when you're doing voltage rankings and things of the like that you plateau, your score plateaus, and you have to try and find ways to gain more voltage. And granted, the voltage boost tap active helps a lot. But what a lot of the whales have been moving towards is, instead of moving towards these voltage boost tap actives, they're moving towards the more SP cycle strategy. So in the natural attribute, like I said, using FES Nozzle, FES Emma, Serenade Maki. And, you know, this would be a great card to backline in that particular instance. However, her LSA is not as good as Initial Kanon, so you would still want to run something like Initial Kanon instead of this particular card. So overall, an 8 for Fessidine, like a 6, like a 5 or a 6 on Yohane as far as usefulness. And Shioriko is pretty run-of-the-mill Fest healer, so probably give her like a 6 or a 7. As far as SRs, there's a Miracle Wave Kanon here. Cool attribute voltage type. You know, not terrible. And Nijiiro Passion's Kerin. Pure attribute guard type stamina shielder. Fine. Nothing too special, but yeah. You know, I'll say it again. Clear winner of the banner, Rin Ochis. Congratulations. Rin now has a card that redeems her for her initial and her third UR. So, congratulations. Alright, YouTube. That's going to be it for us here on the Twitch. And take it easy. We will see you all later. Bye.